Welcome everyone. This is episode 52 of the Transmaxxing podcast, and today's topic is transhumanism. So I think a lot of people want to go beyond the current limitations that we face as humans. And we see that a lot in superhero movies and all those fantasies about having superpowers. And to some extent, we can actually get those things, for example, via genetic engineering. There's also people thinking about becoming a cyborg. And of course, a lot of that is rather dangerous, so you have to be careful. But it also provides a lot of potential for humans in the future. Maybe we can go beyond Earth and establish ourselves on other planets. And to do that we have to leave humanity behind as it is now. Because eventually this Earth will not be habitable anymore, and then we have to establish ourselves in other places. And to do that we have to adapt to those other places. So I think it's necessary to at least on the extent to go beyond the humanity and humans as they are now. And if you look back at human evolution, there's always been changes over time. Sometimes very slow, but still things change over time. It doesn't really stay the same. So, Val, what's your take on those things?
My take on transhumanism? Well, I heavily advocate for empowering humans in the first place, so I think it's a step in the right direction for sure. I think that everyone should become as best as they can.
Are you worried about any risks associated with transhumanism?
There seems like there's be a few social risks, especially since one of the big people who seems like they're doing some sort of technology-based transhumanism is Elon Musk, and he's got a very bad reputation.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff people are talking about is the technological part where you are using your current body, but then you are with technology either replacing some body parts or add some new functionality. It has not to work particularly well. And one advantage is that you will not pass it on, so if it is something bad, then your children will not inherit it. But it also means that you have to do it every time, and it also has risks if you become dependent on the technology. And I can give you an example of that. Let's say, for example, we start using artificial wombs for everything, and then eventually, if we continue for that too long, humans might lose the ability to give birth naturally because we're using all these wombs. So unless they have selection and make sure humans remain fit and capable of surviving without all technology, we can screw ourselves over really badly.
It would seem that we are progressively reaching the right direction, though, especially with prosthetics becoming better and being able to better integrate stuff for accessibility. That means soon enough we'll be able to reintegrate stuff just to empower ourselves.
Well, prosthetics and other modifications are like the gateway to transhumanism. That's why you have Elon Musk with the whole. I don't know that much about it, but with the whole neural implants and shit. That stuff is the gateway, and I think over time, even just having technology and shit like microwaves or ovens and stuff like that, cars, that was the precursor to all of this stuff, slowly infiltrating technology and machinery into our daily lives until we become dependent on it. And then, I think in a couple hundred years or so, maybe even sooner, then we'll have biological modifications and shit become more prevalent to where people are going to have enhancements and stuff, and sort of like the cyberpunk, whatever, I forgot what the full name was, cyberpunk sort of thing.
Yeah, I think to be honest, it's a lot of technological ideas, trying to merge technology with biology is a non-starter because it doesn't really mix that well. I think what we need to do is to modify the genetics directly, and then we can add new functionality or ability seamlessly. And I think one relatively safe way to do so is to replace the Y chromosome with something better, because the Y chromosome is only passed on when you impregnate someone. So then if you replace it with something else, you can make sure that if it turns out that there's some issue with it, or you just want to update it again, you can just add a new Y chromosome and replace the old one. While if you do other type of genetic engineering, like adding new genes to the other chromosomes, it will disperse over time in the gene pool, and it will be hard to get rid of if you want to. But I'm not saying necessarily it's a super big problem either, it's just that it's safer and more potent to replace the Y chromosome, because then you can make bigger changes. You can make sure you're still compatible with your humans. And you can even, that way actually turns humans into hermaphrodites, because if you have, for example, an X chromosome and a Z chromosome, then if they impregnate someone, they pass on the Z chromosome, and if they get pregnant, they pass on the X chromosome, so it remains actually compatible with humans as they are now, while added this new chromosome.
Big picture perspective. Genetic evolution, in terms of like computer programming, would be called a kludge. I mean, it's just a clusterfuck of pieces and parts that have been added on, and genetic evolution just prioritizes like a couple of directives: survival and replication, and then everything is just kind of tacked on or pulled off. And like a good example would be like the Twitter code. Like when Elon Musk got a hold of Twitter, his main programmers were like, we need to refactor the code, because you want to turn Twitter into the new WhatsApp or WeChat, or because X, the idea behind X was that it was going to be this bigger thing, and they're like, well, we need to basically refactor the code, because in order to get Twitter going where we want it to go, we kind of need a reset. And then Elon Musk took a sort of like genetic evolutionary perspective on Twitter, and he's like, no, we're not going to refactor the code. We're just going to work on it as it is. And so biological evolution is the same way, where you've got a trade-off between, like, if you wanted to refactor the human genetic code, you could start with some kind of like proto-human, like a prototype of a human, and it would be like separate from humans biologically, but like after you reprogrammed it, it would be like a more perfect human or whatever. And so like and from there you could do what you wanted. But my perspective would be like, because you're focusing on, you said this one chromosome, but from my perspective, the problem with the human condition is like completely fundamental to the fabric of the human being. It's not one chromosome, it's everything.
The problem here is that you can, of course, create a new species of humans if you want to, with genetic engineering, and maybe it will be humans anymore. But then you have to have those either coexist indefinitely, which is almost impossible. You have to one group genocide the other group. So I don't think you know the implications of this, unless, of course, you send those new humans to another planet, and this I do advocate for, because then there cannot be genocides. But you cannot have two groups coexisting like that, because it will be two species in the same niche. There can only really be one. If you cannot interbreed, then the only other outcome is a full genocide, and this is not something I want. And we also don't need to make like massive changes to humanity either. We are like adapted just fine for this planet. And sure, there might be some like changes needed, that we have to like make sure we don't like degrade genetically over time.
Well, okay, back to the problem. So you're specifically focused on sexual dimorphism. What I'm saying is you want to edit the Y chromosome, and like hypothetically it's the Z chromosome or whatever. What specific problem does that solve? That's my question.
It does solve the problem of having the two sexes that end up having different rules and limitations. So if you change humans into hermaphrodites, and I don't know exactly what the best approach for that is, then people will be able to both get pregnant and impregnate someone. It opens up for more possibilities for sexual interactions. And you don't have those two different types of humans, males and females, and those like status struggles between them. Like you have feminism, and then we have like the men's rights movement and the incels, and all this like social dysfunction because of the two sexes. And this creates division because we have those two sexes. It makes it harder to unite humanity.
Okay, but I mean, aren't you just winding the clock back maybe 150 years of social evolution? Because like, I mean, like how ubiquitous was this problem throughout all of human history? Maybe your reading of history is different from mine, but I feel like that the sexual division like coincides with the rise of corporatism, because corporatism benefits from a sort of divide and conquer strategy. So couldn't you just do like a macroeconomic reset, get away from corporatism and use other forms of government to circumvent the problem? Like that's, I don't know. I think that would be easier than
You're not fixing the issue of people being inherently different, males and females having different abilities. That alone will create resentment. And there is no fixing that.
male and female is a division of labor. It's like a genetic division of labor. So, you know, and we still see this today, even despite all of the feminism and progress and everything. Like men are largely out there doing manual labor, police work, military work, and then women are doing, you know, more childcare, more nursing, more education, more social work, and you get a division of labor that's efficient.
It's not efficient anymore. It's becoming more and more obsolete and dysfunctional. And if you look at the male rules, like one by one, they are becoming like redundant, not needed anymore. Like the main thing males are useful for today is to fight in wars, to like conquer more territory and invade other countries. But this stops being useful when we are conquered everywhere. Then you don't really need the males anymore because we don't need to fight more wars at that point. And we don't want to have like perpetual warfare either. And a lot of like other male jobs are become like replaced by automation. We have machines that are way stronger than males are. So we don't need the male strength anymore.
Well, hold on. If you don't need men, then why aren't these jobs being populated by women? Like, why are there so many of these professions that are still dominated by men?
One big reason is that males have the drive to reproduce, so they want to like earn money and not to take on those professions. For that reason, it also that maybe males are more interested in the more like technical subjects or this like social expectations. But it's not like a female couldn't do that if they really tried. It's more of a priority thing that maybe males gravitate towards it. Doesn't mean females cannot do it. There are some jobs, of course, where males are hard to replace. This is kind of rare, but when it comes to like elite achievements thing, then males tend to dominate it. It's like very meritocratic. But this is super rare and most males can't really reach it anyway because they don't have those like extreme abilities. And it can also be like some physical jobs that haven't been like automated away yet.
Are you trying to solve the problem of war?
I mean, you're getting it in the wrong order here. Like, it's not that we are getting rid of men to stop the wars, it's that the wars will stop and that we don't need men anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Men are redundant.
Like, once we don't have to fight wars anymore, there's no point with men really. Like, they are not needed for anything. And also, like, when it comes to like hermaphrodite thing, it allows us to have people still fulfill those rules males are doing now and have them be performed even better. Because we're not limited to the like male biology or female biology. For example, we can have people as they age, they can become more masculine and turn into like an attractive man that can do those like technical stuff and like manual labor and stuff like that.
Are you under the impression that, editing people or humanity to become like a hermaphroditic species is feasible?
I think it is by replacing one chromosome, but the problem here is that like finding like good data on that is almost impossible. It should be possible based on like intersex conditions that like are pretty close already, so it shouldn't need too much in terms of changes to achieve it.
You're gonna have the part of humanity that's gonna like resist and hold out and see it as like a satanic abomination, and like all of the preachers and imams and everything are gonna come out in the more like religiously regressive
Well,
societies,
that's
and
all
they're
the men. That's all the men that'll resist that. But, I think women and females know that they are superior and that men are redundant. Women have been the gatekeepers of evolution forever. Women decide which males get to reproduce and which males don't get to reproduce. That's why I think inceldom is good to an extent. It weeds out the weak males that are not meant to reproduce and don't contribute anything to the gene pool, which is good. But I think the natural evolution after that occurs is that males will eventually be weeded out and we'll have a female, gynocentric society without the presence of males. Because
it's
as
like
was,
some kind.
mentioned earlier, there's no purpose to men. I think society will eventually evolve to the point where, there is no necessity or need for males.
Yeah, and this hermaphrodite thing, like this is basically adding the few remaining male abilities, like the ability to make someone pregnant, and also like maybe the top 0.0001% in terms of intelligence achievements as well. Like both those things you can add very easily. For example, you can have some people age into males, which I find a bit funny, because then you are like born as like a dick girl or a female, and then as you older become like a useless man. But maybe some men at that point can do some stuff that males are needed for. Like, I don't know the best approach, we can like debate it forever.
Is it a foregone conclusion that men at the current, let's just say in 2024, men are basically the meat robot slaves of women? And I don't know how far back that goes into history, but let's
That's
just
what
say
they've
that
always been.
My view is that before those like technological advancement, I think men were very much needed. But even though men were needed, they were still like used as cannon fodder and to be slaughtered in wars. So sure, males were needed in the past, but it wasn't necessarily a good thing for men. But men did have more power in the past as well. We had like actual patriarchy to a large extent in the past. I don't know exactly how severe it was, how much power men. I think it depended on where they lived. But for example, in Rome, like men had near absolute power over females in some circumstances. Which by the way didn't work out too well, but... And even today we have, for example, in Afghanistan, we have a pretty like radical patriarchy there as well. So men can still potentially use violence to subject females. This is still a possibility that can happen.
okay, but so what happened?
What we have to remember as well is that past societies were super undemocratic, so it was like enforced by the top of certain system. And then like everyone had to follow that based on religion or whatever. Like it wasn't this like democracy thing where like people voted or whatever.
So wait, what's the advantage of imprinting the Z chromosome over the Y? What's the advantage of, let's say, hermaphrodism over genetically altering men to like violently restore order and like take society back, I don't know, 2,000 years? You basically get a bro force that's gonna like get to the top of society and dominate, and they're gonna, everybody that's beneath them, all the men, all the women, and they just restore a kind of ancient Roman system, and we have that system in perpetuity. I'm trying to figure out what the advantage of the Z chromosome is over the bro force.
I mean, we do know what happened in ancient Rome. For example, men forced their wives to have abortion and like destroying the demographics of the empire, for example. That's a thing that happened, so I don't think this was a great success. And also we don't want to like go back into like primitivism if we can avoid that. We want to like advance humanity forward, not go back 2000 years. And sure, there are like nice aspects of ancient Rome and all that, but we have to like go beyond that. I'm not sure how good the system after this like brutal patriarchy will be. I think it will be as fun as you think. But like it's interesting. I think most people will want it today at least. It might happen, it might not happen. But you can like have something like that even if people are like hermaphrodite. You can have like tops and bottoms still, and you can have like way more options instead of like having like males just dominate females and people being born like as one way and then be stuck into that. I think it's more fun if you can like change rules. So you can like start out as females and become men later or something like that. It's maybe more interesting. I like having more flexibility. Not have people stuck in certain rules forever. I'm just really a fan of it.
Everyone's a hermaphrodite now. Aren't you taking away some kind of basic engine of human motivation? Like you start off as a boy, go through male puberty, then you're pubescent, you're a teenager, you're hormonal, then you kind of start evolving into a man, and then like the man, because men kind of exist to serve women, like their purpose is to take care of a woman and take care of children, and that it kind of gives this like overarching meaning and purpose to people's lives. And so like with incels, you take away that meaning and purpose from their existence, and like all that's left is this black void of hedonism and video games and pornography, because like the incel is dying from a lack of meaning. Like the incels are like not allowed to experience the meaning of providing and protecting and that kind of thing. So like I guess you might say, okay, well, we'll turn the incels into hermaphrodites or whatever.
They can have a child or several children with a partner together, just like as we do today. The difference is that people have more options for it, but it's still people become parents. I don't see the problem here at all. And we don't have the incel problem really, unless maybe for like people turn into like only have the male fertility left because as they age they might lose their female ability to get pregnant, and maybe those people will become incels, but then they had like a good start. While now, for example, if we look at males today, they have it kind of rough in the teenage years because they end up having to like compete with older men and have like face all these restrictions upon them. They're kind of like being kept down and not allowed to like pursue their like natural male instincts. So I don't think this is a good thing. I think this is better for people early in life to have a more female role, and then maybe as they age they become ready for the male responsibilities more. To the extent we have that division at all.
I know in Transmaxxing you guys have put a lot of thought into like if you're an incel and you transition to female, that transition is going to like bring meaning to your existence. Like if you're an incel, you're going to lead this pointless black hole meaningless existence, right? If you stay incel. But if you transmax, you're going to lead a meaningful existence. And so what I don't understand is why is the female existence fundamentally meaningful and the male existence is fundamentally meaningless?
That's not even how it works. But the thing is, people can build like meaningful, fulfilling lives via several factors. For one, you want to have a companionship, friendship, and also you want to be able to like have children. At least for a lot of people, it's important. It can be about gaining power in society. And I see people do that to some extent, where they build their own communities, like some like file sharing site or whatever, and you can like ban people you dislike and their friends as well. So there are all those options that people pursue to like make their lives feel meaningful. But I think the fundamental issue right now with males is that the competition between males and males having to like aggressively pursue females make it hard for males to really form like good relationships. They become fragile. Female are wary of them and other males are also wary of them. We don't get this like natural companionship that we would get via hermaphrodite reproduction. There's to some extent some companionship between males and females, but because of all those like sexual dynamics and female selection, it becomes a bit unstable as well, because females might be looking for another partner, they might divorce the husband, and the female can only really get pregnant by one male, so you end up with this like competition.
Wait, so you're saying that inter-male competition is going to basically lead to this kind of disconnectedness, especially like the men who are going to lose the competition, the bottom 80% of men that are like Pareto distribution, they're just going to lose. It's like a natural law. And we see that like with the way that the sexual marketplace has devolved, like the top 20% of men get 80% of the women now. It's all Pareto distributed now. So what's going to happen is that competition never goes away. The bottom 80% of men are going to just end up like disconnected, no companionship, socially isolated. And I guess maybe what you're saying is that people derive meaning from social connection, and that you can't get over this problem of social disconnection. Like that's the fundamental problem of the incel, is that there's no way to get them over that social disconnection. On a smaller scale, you could say, what if really transition? Well, then they transition before puberty. So they never become men. They transition to trans women, and we drastically reduce the incel population or whatever. And those people would be socially connected, and therefore their lives would be meaningful.
Yeah, this is the main appeal for some people, I think, with Transmaxxing, is that you can form those like deeper connections with people that you cannot really form as a male. And sure, for some males they might not feel that need as much, they might think they are okay, and maybe they are. But with incels, for example, I see this like frustration. And often, for example, when someone say to an incel that they can like pay for a prostitute, they don't want to do that, and it's actually understandable that they don't want to do that, because it doesn't really solve the problem anyway.
Yeah, the incel crisis is a crisis of meaninglessness. It's not a crisis of sexlessness. Like, incels are drowning in sex. They've got all the porn they could ever want. They can go visit hookers or whatever they could. But if you talk to an incel and like as if that's some kind of solution, they'll just like stare at you like, nah, dude. Like if you ever talk to an incel, that's not the problem.
I mean, in a lot of places you can go to jail technically for buying sex, so it's not really that great, but yeah, porn is kind of trash as well.
Okay, so I was going to ask if there's a contrast between the gene editing of the Y chromosome, and wouldn't it be more feasible to normalize like prepubescent transition to the point where you almost solve the incel problem, and the only men that are left are like the highest value men, and you can keep them around and they're going to be useful and their lives are going to be meaningful? Isn't that a more pragmatic solution?
I think it's a shitty solution that is way too limited. Like, why settle for that when we can get like cuticles to impregnate, and you can like have that amazing sex with your cat girl, girlfriend or whatever? Like, it's a way more appealing option to me, at least. With current transition options, you're still kinda limited by your biology. If you're born male, you cannot get pregnant, for example. But as we make advancements, we might be able to transcend those limitations and create new amazing things. So, Eddie, what is your view on that?
I think it's cool. I'm not against it, obviously. I don't really know too much about it, but I don't think it's one of those things that should be gatekept in the future, if that makes sense. I think it should be expanded upon through medicine and science to its fullest extent. And I do think, using technology to enhance the human body is a good thing in the long run, because eventually we are going to need those enhancements to continue our race.
Yeah, this planet will not remain habitable for humans forever, and we have to survive on other places as well. And sure, right now we don't need radical changes for humanity to survive. We can do just fine with we just have to prevent us from decaying. That's pretty much it. Maybe some advancement could be beneficial, but there isn't really anything radical needed right now for humanity in the short term. But longer term we will have to adapt. And this is the natural course of action with evolution, that over time the changes does add up, become pretty big and substantial. And of course this depends on the environment. There are some species, for example, that haven't really changed in hundreds of millions of years, but others have changed very quickly. So what
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
it seems like we might need more technology and stuff to help protect us from the different environments if we are to ever try to inhabit on a different planet. Or figure out ways of making us tougher to different environments.
Yeah, when we look at the universe and try to find life, every time we look, and no matter how hard we try, we don't find anything really. So for the most part of the universe is very hostile to life, and it requires a lot for us to expand beyond this planet. It's extremely difficult. So what do you think about the concept of abandoning the sex binary? So maybe if everyone can get a nice girl dick and get pregnant at the same time, and also make other people pregnant, it will open up so many possibilities, and I'm not sure if it really has any downsides.
I can see it being possible in many thousands of years from now, where there's only one sex, and you can just essentially fornicate with whoever you want to have offspring and continue the species that way. I think with enough genetic modifications and stuff like that, enough advancements in scientific technology and medicine, it will be a reality one day.
Yeah, what we don't know, or at least I don't know, is whether or not it will be enough to just replace the Y chromosome, or if we will have to make further changes for that. If it is just the Y chromosome, then it's maybe more straightforward and easy to reverse. If other changes are required, it's a lot harder to implement, and makes it harder to even justify trying, perhaps.
I think people with traditional values will try to shut down the idea, even though it would be more beneficial for reproduction and such.
Yeah, traditionalism is actually kinda anti-natal in practice, because it will not promote the highest growth of the population, and often doesn't even work when governments try to push those things. In Hungary, for example, it fails really badly. So what I think will happen is that people should at least see that all those conservative ideas doesn't work, and then they will have to look for more radical solutions. But it's like that every time, that people have to see it failing 20 times before they give up. It's the same with communism, but at least the more traditional types of it. But maybe after that, when people give up on the old ideas that doesn't work, we can advance humanity forward instead. And of course we can debate exactly in which direction we should go. But what I am sure is that current trans ideology doesn't go nearly enough. And we can go way further than what people often imagine right now if we really actually give it a fair shot and look beyond just ourselves, because a lot of people just look at how can I like advance myself, how can I stop aging or change my sex or become like a cat girl or whatever, but what we should look at is what about people in the future that aren't like us? What the option can we give them? Because if we, for example, modify the genetics itself, we can open up for so many more possibilities than right now.
Are you just focusing on that sex dimorphism aspect of transhumanism?
I mean, there are certainly other options we already talked about that before you joined. But it's just that I have to be comfortable with doing this for humans as they are now on the earth without like ending up with either like a genocide situation because the group diverse too much or is too limited because you only want to do very gradual changes over time.
Okay, so there's two things that are in the basket of good. One would be like a reduction in war, and then the other would be a reduction in like meaningless and social upheaval that results from like too many incels, like this procession of incels that's happening. You know, maybe like step one, solve the incel problem, like step two, eradicate war, you know, and then like step three is like move into a future utopia.
Because you're not listening. Like, I already told you that the first step is getting rid of the wars and having a unified government for the entire planet, and after that we can work on like solving social problems and look at what's actually good long term. Like what before that we have to like focus on societal competition, which is like the prisoner dilemma again, where we have to look at how to win wars, and this is not really the same as what's actually good for humanity as a whole. And we see that in Ukraine now, where like both sides have to like escalate to like keep out with each other and not get conquered. It's actually mostly like Ukraine having to like keep up, but Russia is maybe fucked if Ukraine wins though, so it's this like never-ending war situation, like until one side like kind of falls apart, it will continue. And this is how wars often go. And this is not something I want for humanity in the future, but this is not like something we can avoid with genetic engineering. You avoid it by having a unified government for the entire planet, and there isn't really any way around that, because wars are not caused by male aggression. They are caused by competition between states, and males are forced to fight if they don't want to.
Do you think with how crazy Elon Musk is that he may reduce the progression in transhumanism in the near future?
I mean, everything Elon Musk touches is going to like face troubles because it's going to like wreck it. And I am aware that Elon Musk had like moderate success with some progress in the past, like SpaceX in the past has had some like success, not with Starship, though Starship seems like a disaster. And same with like Tesla and stuff, but like all the stuff is in the past, and it seems to be like spiraling more and more and becoming more and more of a problem for humanity going forward. And he's like the reckless type who doesn't really think about the risks, he just want to like move forward and doesn't really care about the people he is harming. And of course he's going to have like negative consequences in terms of like the ability to make progress. And the people who do want to do similar things as him is going to have problems because they will be associated with him. This is kind of similar to with, for example, Hitler. Like a lot of his policies are kind of hard to like copy even if they will work because it's too close to what he did and people hate Hitler, so they don't want to be like associated with him in any way.
Okay, do you think it would be possible to create a drug for incels that would like take the pain of meaninglessness away? Is there any like chemical solution, video game solution, neuralink? Is there any like immediate like neuropsychological solution on the horizon?
I mean, this is what psychiatry has tried for like 100 years now, and it hasn't worked. Like, you cannot drug people to become happy. That's never worked and never will, I think.
So your perspective is that time has proven that that part of the equation is intractable. They made a movie called The Matrix that part of it is like, okay, you can put people in a matrix and you can give them paradise, but they're still going to like wake up from that. Even if it's like a perfect simulation, like there's still something,
I mean,
there's something about that.
The truth is like super unethical, and nobody really wants that. Very few people actually want that. People want to know what's real and what isn't. I think is maybe deeply ingrained in us, and people kind of revolt around it, like the possibility, like I think we can create like good life in the real world. It's way easier than try to load like Matrix stuff that is like frankly not really possible. Like, you cannot do simulations like that. We already have video games.
Yeah. When classic World of Warcraft came out, that was like 2006, it looked like at that moment in time, there was like an inflection point where people were going to be able to, this was going to be like the beginning of the whole thing. And then like Ready Player One is where it was going to evolve to and be more immersive and whatever. But it looked like in 2006, incels could just play World of Warcraft and that was going to solve the problem. It seemed like that, you know, for a few years.
I mean, playing fucking World of Warcraft is the most pathetic male coop imaginable. Like, I'm sorry, but stop playing those games, for the fuck's sake. Like, it's the worst coop ever. Like, not just a subscription cost for that garbage game, but play something good instead. That has actual good gameplay. If you want like strategy, there are like strategy games specifically. I don't really see the point of those like massive multiplayer grind. First where you like spend 10 hours to like do some very monotonous grind gameplay just to like level up and stuff. It's the type of games you want to avoid, like those like predatory mobile games. Like even Genshin Impact is kinda in that category as well. Like, it's just, it takes way too much time away and you like waste so much time just to get to the good gameplay if it even exists in the first place. And you can do so much better than like wasting time on those like shitty games. Like, if you're going to play a game, make sure it's actually worth playing. And I think this marks the end of episode 52 of the Transmaxxing podcast. I hope that you will have a nice day forward, and maybe one day you will get a cat girl girlfriend. Goodbye, everyone!